In this video, we're going to do a garden makeover. Now, this garden is got to be not only food productive, beautiful, but also the couple in question have two children, two dogs, and two busy jobs. They have absolutely no spare time for gardening. So this garden has to not only tick all of those boxes, but it's got to look after itself as well. So that is a bit of a challenge. So let's get cracking with it. As discussed in previous videos, the perfect storm is brewing. High oil prices, and on top of that, we've also got the volcanic activity, which could really affect our weather conditions. With chances are high, we could have an absolutely scorchingly hot summer, which would be fantastic. But then, of course, your crop yields are low because we haven't had enough rain. Although we had loads over the winter, in spring it's been really very dry. So potentially there's a lot of trouble ahead. And what with the higher oil prices, the cost of food could absolutely skyrocket and go through the roof. But not only that, there could be scarcity as well. So, what can you do in your own garden that mitigates all that, that isn't going to cost the earth or be a lot of work? That's what we're going to look at in this video. So this garden actually is quite close to where I live, and it's already been landscaped for the lowest possible maintenance. So there's no grass and hardly any plants because the couple in question don't have any spare time for gardening whatsoever. Now, luckily for them, they have a terrific opportunity to grow lots of food because if you look on the left-hand side of the garden, they've got this low wall and it's nice and wide. It's about 34 centimetres wide, which is the perfect width for putting containers on. And they could fill the entire top of this wall with containers. So for growing stuff like potatoes, the containers need ideally to be a minimum depth of about 30 centimetres. Now, I haven't quite managed to find some that are 30 centimetres, but 28, close enough. So all they'd have to do is buy a whole load of these troughs, and I found some that even come with a drip tray, which is fantastic because that way you're not going to have any of the water dripping down the side of the wall, and it catches all of the water, so you've got a little reservoir of water as well. So having a whole wall full of potatoes and flowering plants is a fantastic start, but there's a lot more that we could do with this garden. Now, whilst the focus of this design is undoubtedly for food production, it doesn't have to be. The design I'm about to show you could be filled full of flowering shrubs and herbaceous plants. It doesn't have to be vegetables. So just bear that in mind when you view the design. And it's also perfect for anybody renting who wants to take the garden with them wherever they move to. So to help you see what we've got, I've put it on a plan. And you can see they've got the existing lawn, the dining table and patio area already done with the stepping stone path and the grey stone chippings at the bottom here. So they're already a good way there with their garden design. Now they've requested a shed in the corner, so we're just going to have to move the garden sofa area up a little bit. But so along here is where I've put all the planters that we saw in the last photograph, but also we could get some metal planters in here. And there's some very inexpensive ones that now they don't have a bottom to them, so you do have to line them with some landscaping fabric. But they're 60 centimetres wide, 1 metre 20 long, and 30 centimetres high, so you can grow a lot of vegetables in there. So it'd be nice if they frame either side of the lawn there, and that does help screen the shed a little bit. And especially if you grow a taller crop like sweet corn or tomatoes, that will really help hide the shed there. They could also put more planters along the rest of the wall, and there's room for another one of these metal planters by the conservatory and also this side of the garden by the vegetable planter. But that's a lot, mostly on the one side of the garden. So what I've also done is put in a pergola, because with this that you can grow beans up it and other things as well. So let me show you how all this would look. So here's what we've got now, and here's how it would look with the shed and the pergola and all of those fruits and vegetables hanging off the side there, and that's just it in a different colour combination and with the taller sweet corn. Now, obviously, you could add a lot more variety to what you're growing. This is just the AI impression of how it would look. And to be completely honest, it's such a nightmare getting AI to do what you want it to do. This was the best I could manage without completely losing the will to live. But it gives you an idea of the types of things you can achieve. And here's the view from the other end of the garden. Yes, they've put in a completely different style of pergola. No, the things aren't in the right place with the bench, the shed, and the planter at the end. But anyway, that aside, it gives you an idea of how it could look. But isn't this going to be a tremendous amount of work for a couple that have no time? Not necessarily if you do it right. So let's now look at the ways we can mitigate the amount of work that's usually involved with this amount of planting. And what I would suggest is that they put an irrigation system in with a drip feed system and put it on a timer. Then they have not got to worry at all about the watering, because for me, that is the biggest failure point. You get busy, you mean to water it, but by the end of the day, you're exhausted. You think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, rinse and repeat. And a few days without water, and you're really going to stress the crops, if not kill them completely. So having an automated water system is absolutely key. And also growing potatoes or crops like potatoes in containers is actually one of the best ways to do it. There's a guy called Tony from Simplify Gardening on YouTube, and he has just come out. Now, he's done a lot of videos on how to grow the perfect potato, but he's recently just redone it and put all that information into one masterclass. So I will link beneath this video to that video, and he'll show you it's really quite easy. Compost, don't put soil in troughs. You need compost because you need the aeration. You need the soil to be free draining. So just a couple of handfuls of a simple organic fertilizer like bloodfish and bone, and hey presto, you've got all that the plant needs for probably most of the growing season. Perhaps latterly you might need to top it up with a more potassium based fertilizer like kelp, but he covers that, or seaweed, he covers that in his masterclass video tutorial. So the main thing that upsets potatoes is inconsistent watering. So if you've got that set up on a timer, things like blight you don't tend to suffer with. So it's a really simple, easy crop to grow. And in the troughs that I've found, now these troughs take about 48 litres of soil, and they should be able to grow between 1.5 to 3 kilos of potatoes in every single trough. So for argument's sake, let's say they only managed 2 kilos. That's still quite a lot of potatoes. So I got AI to work out, if they had 11 of these troughs, how many potatoes that they could grow. So in each trough, you should be able to get between 1.5 and 3 kilos of potatoes. So let's say 2 kilos for easy maths and allowing for things not going perfectly. And for a family of 4, it would feed them for about 2 months. So that's pretty good. But they've actually got room for at least 17, perhaps even more. So they could feed themselves for at least, if they really went for it, they could grow 3 months worth of potatoes. And the beauty of this system is, while it's frost free, you can store the potatoes in the pots. You don't actually need to decant them until the frosts arrive. Now, yes, it would cost them twice the amount that it would to just buy potatoes in the store, organic ones. But if there's a shortage and the price doubles, this garden would be an investment because it will pay for itself. And because it's all in containers, they can take it with them. So it's perfect if you're going to move or you're a renter and you don't know how long you're going to be in the property. This entire garden can come with you. And the petunias not only look pretty, but what they help do is shade the pot, because what the potatoes will not like is having their roots baked. The idea is not to bake them pre-putting them in the oven. So now the foliage of the potatoes will flop down in time and help cover that pot. But in the meantime, the petunias, or whatever low-hanging bedding plants that you put in, will cover the pot, so keeping it cooler. So that's why it's a double functionality there. But anyway, it'd be nice to balance that with something on the other side of the garden, because it's all down one side. So by putting a simple pergola in, now you've got two choices for fixing, well, three. You can either dig a hole or concrete it in, but if you think you might be moving, then why not have a pergola you can take with you? This is what I've done at the allotment. I've used Met posts. Now, the ones at the allotment, they're on spikes and you can actually drive them into the ground. But if there's hardcore underneath the gravel that they've got here, they could just scrape that to one side and you can get Met posts that you actually bolt into place. So really simple to put up. And also their washing line at the moment goes from fence to fence and it's a bit on the low side. So it almost garrots you as you walk past it. With the pergola in place, it'll be higher because pergolas need to be at least 7 or 8 foot high to allow one for you to walk under them comfortably, but also as things hang down. So usually 7 to 7.5, 8 foot high. Then they could attach the washing line to the pergola and actually do a V shape. So it comes across to the pergola and then goes back to the fence. So that will double the size that they've got for their washing and also have it higher. Although I do have an alternative location for that washing line, which we'll get into later. So you wouldn't have to look at it at all. Now, on the pergola, they could just have some pots with some beans. You could have things like runner beans, or you could have things like borlotti beans or rattlesnake pole beans. And these beans are the types that you dry. So, beans are very high protein. So you could dry them. If you grow some tomatoes, you could make your own baked beans if you had to. But there's a lot of nutrition in beans, as I say. So that's something that's really easy to grow. And you just shell them and dry them out and then store them in a glass jar away for emergencies. So if they want to get a bit more adventurous and grow a few more things and have a few more flowers, I put in a few extra planters. Now you can get these quite attractive metal planters. This type of planter, you look at them funny and they dent. They're not very strong. So if you wanted something a little bit more robust, you could easily do exactly the same as I have done on the allotment using reclaimed scaffold boards. You can either paint them or, as I've done, I actually charcoaled them with a blowtorch, because when you burn that or singe that first layer of wood, the water, there's nothing to rot because you've already carbonised it. And then I just treated it with linseed oil because I'm growing directly in that. But you could just paint it if you didn't want to go to, because it is quite a faff, and have them too high so that you can grow deeper, or just having them one single height, as I've done on the allotment, you can still grow a lot of stuff. So this is a really simple garden to set up. It could be done, just the planters alone could be done over the course of a weekend or two, and then another weekend to build that pergola. Again, very simple. So if you really went for it and had about 17 of these and the metal planters, you'd probably be looking about 300, 350, something like that. There are cheaper ones on Amazon, but they don't have the drip tray. Now, the next door neighbour has a grapevine, a very vigorous one, that's growing up across their fence, which they could easily train over the pergola and have grapes as well. And the next door neighbour is more than happy for them to do that, because it is a very rampant variety and it produces these beautiful, sweet red grapes. Now, if grapes isn't their thing, they could always still do that and then make wine from them. So, lots of opportunities. And it makes an attractive frame for that pathway as well. Now, they wanted a shed at the bottom of the garden, and they've got a seating area, so that's gone in as well. But also behind the seating area, they could attach, because it's quite a strong fence, on the railings, they could attach a couple more troughs. And it's a little bit shadier down there, so things like lettuce would grow in semi-shade, and also more flowers. Things like busy lizzies can take the shade. And what you would need to do is these irrigation systems, because of the pressurisation and the way they're running around the garden, what you would do is have a splitter tap on the tap, so either on the timer or on the tap itself, so that you can run one down one side of the garden and one on the other. You don't want to try and irrigate the entire garden on just one irrigation, because it's obviously a lot more powerful at the beginning of the irrigation than at the end. So if you split it, then you can do it equally. And I've tested it in my own garden, and you can run both at the same time, unless the pressure drops really low, then you'd need to do them one at a time. Now, the smaller troughs are 48 litres, and a bag of 50 litres of compost costs about £10 these days, but there is a cheaper way of doing it. If you do enough containers, so say if they really went for it and did 11 troughs and a couple of those larger metal planters, that would be approximately a cubic metre of compost they'd need. Now, we've got a garden centre not too far from us. This is an independent Oliver's. It's a fabulous independent nursery and garden centre, and they have their own compost which they make. And their eco compost, they will deliver it in bulk. So you just get a tarpaulin on the drive and get them to tip it down, and then you can fill each planter, and it'd be considerably cheaper than doing it by the bags. But if they're just going to do a few planters, then they also sell for about £6 a bag that you can get it already bagged. So if that's easier, if they're not doing too many in one go. But the more you do, the cheaper it gets. And of course, anything made of plastic and metal, anything produced like this, prices are going to be getting higher. So even if you don't plant everything in one year, still buy all the containers now, because they're not going to be getting any cheaper. And if you don't use them, you can always sell them on eBay or Marketplace or something. So what are my other recommendations for this garden? Well, I'd strongly suggest composters and water butts. Now you can get these, usually you get a discount because I think they make it out of council recycling. I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyway, they've organised a discount with getcomposting.com. Now, depending on your area, you can often get away with drip irrigation when there's a hosepipe ban. It depends. Sometimes it's allowable, sometimes it isn't. So the water butts are your backup, so that you could just get a little pump in there and your system can get going again. Because as I say, it's inconsistent watering or lack of water that really causes the biggest failures. And I had this on my allotment last year. We didn't have any water and I didn't have any crops. So this year I've invested in 3 IBC tanks. So I've got 3,000 litres of water. I'm not having that happen ever again. And in my own garden, I've got 3 water butts, so that's about 600 litres of water. That's hidden behind the willow screening there. So again, always have the backup. And it's great to make your own compost. I've got a single composter by my shed, and I got about 60 litres of brilliant compost out that the other day. Did rather upset the ants, so I left some in place because they've made a little house in there. But yeah, I can usually get 100 litres. Now, okay, I've only saved myself £20 with 100 litres of compost that I've made, but it's really good, nutritious, fantastic quality compost, full of nutrition, and that's really going to help top up all of my veg planters. So I've been really surprised at just how productive this garden can be. Now, they've also got a front garden, so they could also grow a whole load of stuff there as well if they wanted to. And also they've got this fantastic space down the side of the house. Now, they probably won't want to do this because they just want to get a shed, but if it was me, I would actually turn that into a giant lean-to. I'd put a polycarbonate roof over the entire thing, enclose it, and then I would turn that entire area into a utility area stroke greenhouse stroke potting room stroke workshops. This isn't exactly what I had in mind, although it's close. AI was glitching at this point when I asked it to extend the roof and move the potting bench over to next to the storage unit. This is what it did. Bizarre. Anyway, and then I tried to correct it and it did this, but you get the gist. I would utilise every last bit of space there, and that would enable me to extend the growing season because all the potatoes could be started off inside while it's too frosty. And just this week we've had a load of frost, so whenever there's any frost, they could leave the potatoes, get them going a month or so earlier in that space, and maybe even grow tomatoes in there all year. So there's a lot of potential for that space, although it is a little bit shady, but it really could be utilised. And then if it was undercover, it could be used certainly in the winter for drying laundry. in the continent, what they do is their washing lines, they go back and forth a lot. So they could have from the beginning of the structure right to the end, a washing line that goes back 2 or 3 times. And then you could dry clothes in there because with the roof on, it's going to be so much warmer. You could leave the door open for the aeration, but then you wouldn't need the washing line going across the lawn, which you're either walking into or looking at the whole time. So it's another good space for the washing line. But anyway, they've got the shed option. And in another video, I will do an option that if the shed wasn't there, there's a whole load of other things you could do to the bottom of that garden. So I'll do that in another video, but I'm afraid that is only going to be available to view as part of the food growing formula course, which at the moment is half price because I'm still adding content to it. And that course shows you how to create stunning gardens that are food productive and how you can transform an existing garden into a food producing one without ruining it and making it look like an allotment. Also in that course, I cover how to preserve food. So if you'd like to learn how to design a fabulous food producing garden, get it now while it's at half price. I'll put a link below this video. Having a food producing garden, it's not an expenditure, it's an investment because it takes a minimum of 3 months to grow food. And if there are shortages, the prices are going to go through the roof. Well, they're going to go through the roof anyway because of we're in the perfect storm of situations. So, there is nothing more important you could spend your money on right now than investing in containers and compost and an irrigation system and a big sack of organic fertilizer like bloodfish and bone that you can just sprinkle on and have an entire food producing system set up. And to keep weeds at bay, you could put a little mulch of wood chip, and just now wood chip does degrade and it uses the nitrogen, so it's not the perfect mulch, but straw is too messy in a garden setting. So you just add a little bit more fertilizer so that the nitrogen that gets used up in composting the wood chip, that doesn't take it away from the plant. So you just put a little bit extra. That way it keeps the weeds down, it keeps the moisture in, and you have to make sure your drip line is underneath the mulch so that the water can get through and doesn't evaporate on top of the mulch. So this is pretty much a set it and forget it system. Yes, it's a bit of investment in time and money at the beginning, and people often say, oh, I haven't got the money to do the garden. Well, look at your other expenditures. People are so hooked into things like Netflix and Sky and all this type of stuff that you spend an absolute fortune on. That's going to do you no good at all when you're hungry. And if it takes 3 months to grow food, you have to do this now. There's still time to plant potatoes. You may not be able to get seed potatoes. If that's the case, you just go to the supermarket and buy organic potatoes. They have to be organic because the non-organic, they tend to spray them with something to stop them sprouting. So get a couple of bags of organic potatoes, and in a trough the size that I put in this garden, you would just plant 2 potatoes, cover them with soil and the fertilizer mix, pop in the drip irrigation, and then put a thin layer of wood chip mulch on top. Hey presto, job done, and you don't have to do anything else. So this is the ultimate in low maintenance food producing gardens. So if you want more ideas, do check out the food garden formula, which is half price, and I'll show you how to transform your garden into a food producing one that looks good. Now that course concentrates on the aesthetics. I show you how to do it from a design perspective. I don't really teach how to grow vegetables, although there are videos from other experts in there that do. But if you really want to just learn how to grow vegetables, then I would recommend the Garden Like a Viking growing system. I did that at the beginning of the year and it's a really fabulous course. But my course concentrates on getting it to look good, and Nate's course concentrates on the nuts and bolts of how you do it and how you set up the sprinkler system and everything else. And it's as much work to set up a sprinkler system for a few tubs as it is for 20. So you might as well go for it and do it now while things are available, relatively affordable, and you can get it done easily. Don't wait until you are hungry. And by the time the supermarket shelves start to show signs of shortages, it's going to be too late to grow things. So you really do need it now. There's not much in life that's more important to spend money on than food security. We have got so used, we got normalcy bias of so used to having food always there, we can't imagine it not being there. But if that situation arises, or the cost of it is just so unaffordable, you will be so grateful that you have grown some yourself. And you can, like I said, you can start off small. You don't have to put in as much as I put in this garden, but do something, because there are lots of people living in flats that can't do anything like this. So those of us with a garden really should do grow something to take the pressure off of the food supply chains, which look like they're going to be under a lot of strain this year. So regardless of whether you're going to fill your garden with flowers or vegetables, or hopefully a mix of the two, I hope you found this video inspiring. So until next time, take good care.